Hello, everyone. I'm AhmedMarey, and I'll be presenting to you our latest paper titled Simulating Human Senses to Improve Thermal Comfort under the theme of virtual environments and emerging realities. Let me start off by a quote from Plasma's book, The Eyes of the Skin, in which he wrote, "The inhumanity of contemporary architecture and cities can be understood as the consequence of the neglect of the body and the senses, and the imbalance in our sensory system. Human beings are mostly considered visually dominant creatures. In other words, we strongly prefer visual thinking, reasoning, and imagination. And architects have traditionally been no different in this regard, designing mainly for the sense of sight. Visual dominance can be explained or accounted for, at least neuroscientifically. After all, it turns out that processing what we see takes up significantly more of our brains than dealing with information from our other senses. Morton Hellig, the creator of Sensorama, which is the world's first multisensory virtual reality equipment, envisioned the hierarchy of attentional capture by each of the senses when writing about the multisensory future of cinema. Nonetheless, while observers from various disciplines appear to conquer on vision's current supremacy, we couldn't help but ask what has been lost due to the visual dominance seen everywhere in architecture. On the other hand, we have observed the emergence of virtual realities during the last couple of years. Pinazzo in 2017 used virtual reality to control virtual conditions to understand the effect of short exposure to colored light on thermal perception. Salomone in 2020 evaluated the effect of visual stimuli on thermal comfort using VR techniques as well. They concluded that the light color has to be taken into account when predicting the thermal perception of individuals. After some studies found cross effects between multiple comfort domains, the approach to analyzing human comfort has shifted to a multi domain paradigm. Especially with the emergence of climate change as a significant area of study in natural and medical sciences, as well as more recently in social and political sciences, as a result of the well-documented phenomena of global warming. The scientific committee has made significant contribution to our understanding of the Earth's current climate system, including a variety of data and estimates on the future climate, as well as information on the implications and dangers of predicted global warming. Due to the heat rise risk we are facing because of climate change, and since the effect of other senses on thermal comfort has not been studied in the workspaces to the best of our knowledge, this study aims to assess the influence of multisensory experience on human thermal perception and comfort level utilizing the latest available VR technology. The significance of this research lies in understanding the influence of the other sensory experience to improve the thermal acceptance of the surrounding environment to cope with heat rise and hence design resilient office buildings. Participants in this study were recruited from an office space with targeted age between 23 and 45. The experiment was voluntary, and participants were informed that they could withdraw their participation without giving a reason, according to the GDPR. The experiment lasted 10 minutes to maintain heat dissipation from the VR headset. Each participant was experimented individually following identical procedures. They spent 30 minutes seated while working on a PC in the first chamber under air temperature of 22 degrees Celsius and relative humidity of 45%. The participants then moved to the experiment room, which was 10 degrees warmer and more humid by 10%. After spending 2 minutes in the experiment room, we collected the first thermal sensation and thermal comfort votes, also known as TSV and TCV. They were then asked to put on the VR headset, which was set up to get them immersed in the virtual environment seen here. After another 2 minutes, the second set of TSV and TCVs were collected to see the effect of the visual stimulus on the thermal perception. Finally, the olfactory, gustatory, and auditory stimuli were introduced for 6 minutes, and the final votes were taken along with the end interview questions. As we can see here, we conducted man-Whitney U test to see if there is significant a significant difference between different sets of TSVs and TSVs. And as we can see here, there is a significant difference between the visual stimulus and the all stimuli or the rest of the stimuli, both for thermal sensation and thermal comfort votes. And as we can see here from the distribution of the graphs, we can see that in the thermal sensation, the all stimuli decrease the thermal sensation, which is preferable in the scenario, and it increased the thermal comfort, which is also preferred. Our findings validate the influence of the multisensory stimuli on improving the individual thermal sensation, which was not observed through the visual stimulus alone, as the mean of the comfort vote increased and the thermal sensation vote decreased, which are both preferable in the experiment context. All the votes were recorded, all the votes that were recorded revealed improved thermal comfort levels with higher tolerance to warmer conditions of the space when all senses were induced. After removing the VR headset and during the post-experiment interview, participants ensured such findings. The intensity of the senses were recorded by the participants and ranked accordingly. The gustatory was ranked first, followed by the auditory. The visual and olfactory were tied for the lowest rank. We think that the psychological factor in the experiment in this context strongly influences the thermal sensation vote, which is reflected in the numbers stated before. The introduction of all stimuli during the immersive stage of the experiment had amplified effects. However, further experiments are needed to verify these findings in which other stimuli are introduced prior to the visual stimulus. This study acts as a proof of concept for the effect of multisensory stimuli on thermal sensation and thermal comfort to mitigate heat rise risks due to climate change. In order for architects to develop an understanding of those effects, it is imperative for future studies or future study designs to address different types of each stimulus. Cross-referencing different variations of the different senses shall allow future studies to reach more insightful results. We also recommend intensive investigation of the gustatory sense since it showed the greatest potential in improving thermal comfort. And thank you.